Go open your web browser to that
Type
and then
it
stick a Post-it note with your question on your screen.
I know,
It'll make its way to
It
us.
is ironic right after social media. We're like, hit up our Instagram. Make sure to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Like, okay.
Oh, yeah.
Hi, everyone. From Rolling Hills Covenant Church, this is No Dumb Questions, where we get to explore the questions you've always wanted to ask, because every question is worth asking. My name is Nick Dethlefson, and I am the host for today's discussion, and I'm joined by Alex, our worship pastor, and Connor, our high school pastor. Today, our question is, do the benefits of social media outweigh the negatives, and should Christians use social media? Connor, you want to kick us off?
Yeah, that's good. So I think one of the challenges of this discussion in talking about how we use social media is defining like what social media is. As I talk with high schoolers and young adults, a lot of the question is like, well, is YouTube considered social media? Because I'm not really interacting with anyone. It's not very social. It's just media. Or what about TikTok, where like I'm scrolling and I'm watching videos, but it's not very social. I'm sending things to each other. So defining like what we're talking about first of all, and categorizing things, I think is helpful. So I think in most conversations, I like to break down social media into like, what is the content that we're receiving? Like in some ways, social media has content that we're consuming, but also social media has like a form that it takes, like form versus content. When we're talking about social media, are we talking about the idea of scrolling? Are we talking about the idea of like how we are curating our profile, or are we talking about how we're scrolling? So we need to differentiate those. And then like the different ways that social media is used, whether it's for entertainment, like I'm receiving information, I'm laughing at it, or connection, like is this where I'm looking at pictures of my friends, or even like more information. So you're consuming, but it's not funny memes, it's news or those sort of things. I think kind of each of those deserve their own time in like pros and cons of each of those sort of things. So maybe we start, I think, with just kind of the overarching like benefits and negatives in talking about the content on social media. Because I think as Christians, there's kind of this undergirding, like there is content that we would just say is sinful. Like if we're looking at it if we're meditating on it, posting it, those sort of things. And so it becomes like an easier conversation for Christians because we all have this common ground of like, there are just things I shouldn't look at. So how do we view social media and its benefits in terms of like receiving content? Do you guys have thoughts? Or like what are the overarching benefits of the content of social media?
Yeah, I feel like the first benefit just goes to like connecting people, right? That's like maybe the first thing people think of, being connected to their friends, their family, people that they don't get to see very often because they don't live, locally, or they don't have proximity to them. So yeah, or maybe
Good.
News gathering, things like that. But yeah, mostly connecting.
Good. So there's just like your Aunt Susan's post about her kids. Like that's just content that is beneficial because you get to see pictures of your cousins or whatever.
Or their breakfast.
Or the breakfast.
Just so important.
Is that beneficial?
No.
Definitely not.
Okay, good. Do you have thoughts?
Well, yeah, I mean, I do agree that the ability to connect with your loved ones all over the world. My wife has her sister in Thailand, her other sister in Australia, her mother in Russia, and her father in Uzbekistan. So like she can have a video call or a chat with these people, otherwise that wouldn't have been possible, even just a few years ago. So there is that benefit of the connection piece of social media.
Okay, cool. So when we're talking about connection, benefits, see people all around the world, like you wouldn't be able to connect with through text. You keep up with them in that way. What other sort of benefits in connection? I've heard one, like you're connecting with people from high school that you never would have connected with otherwise, right?
Super important.
Like not just, that's arguable, I guess. But yeah, so not just like extended family, but I would never know what Timmy from high school is up to, but now I do. And I even can encourage him at times. Like it's his birthday and I can send him happy birthday. You guys see that as beneficial?
Yeah.
No. Okay. Okay. That's good. One yes, one no.
Not saying happy birthday. Well, I mean, I think
Tell
it
us the
is. I
benefit.
think it is definitely beneficial because Timmy, for this example, knows that he's, you're thinking about him on his birthday and celebrating him. I think a text or a phone call could accomplish the same thing, and maybe to a greater extent than posting on someone's Facebook page. Yeah. But that in it of itself is, a nice benefit to social media.
Okay, yeah. So even if it's somewhat cheap, like a cheap form of encouragement, it's still encouragement. So that's beneficial.
Yeah.
You think not so much?
I just think there's so much false sense of connection.
Yeah.
I'm so biased against social media, and so it's hard for me to not just be cynical here and sit here. But yeah, I just think that remembering someone's birthday because you put it on your calendar and giving them an actual phone call and speaking to them over the phone is an actual form of connection, whereas passively scrolling past and maybe clicking the like button is a very, very passive form of connection, which is not actually connection and is almost worthless.
Yeah, that's good.
But real quick too, I think, Alex, you brought this up before, but maybe we can just go around and say like what our experience with social media has been personally. I think that'll help people watching kind of get where we're coming from and connect. So do you want to maybe kick us off? And
yeah, I mean, I think, back in 2007, whatever,
MySpace.
honestly, back in MySpace. And then when the iPhone came out, I couldn't afford an iPhone. So I got like the next cheapest Android phone that, first one that came out. And I got on all of it, Instagram and, I guess it was just Facebook, Instagram, maybe Twitter at that time. And I used it all the time, and it was very different back then because it really was a time-based feed. And so you were seeing your friends' updates in the order that they posted them. It now is very different. It's like an algorithm-based feed, and it's just whatever they think they're going to hook your attention with. So it's very different. But yeah, I used it a lot, and then kind of put it away because of different temptations that were coming into my life through this access to the whole world and people that I don't need to be connected to. So I kind of put that away. And funnily enough, is that how you say it? Funny enough, I ended up running the social media account at my previous church, which was a church of about 10,000 people. And I was in charge of creating all the content for it. And I'm the guy who doesn't have any of it, at that point. I also have an online ministry for worship leaders, and we use it to encourage worship leaders. But I say encourage because I'm like, is it really actually doing anything? Yeah. I think it's doing a little bit more than, if there was nothing there for them. But but I have a guy who does that for me. I don't do it myself. And so I have some experience with social media, but personally, as Alex and Fiej and I've ripped it completely out of my life, and if I ever sneak back on sometimes, which is very rarely, I feel terrible about everything in my life. It's not good for me at all. And that's just me. And I don't want to put my problems and weaknesses on other people, but I've just like completely ripped it out of my life.
Okay.
Yeah. That's where I'm at.
I think for me, I made a Facebook. I have like pretty low social media usage, at least compared to most people or most of my peers, I guess. But I made a Facebook and then like never really updated it. And I remember like being early on, and I think it was Facebook or Instagram. You could see like how many friends you had and how many other people had, and it's just numbers are a great way to compare against other people. And then you feel that sense of like, either sadness or jealousy or whatever that might feel like, or being inadequate if your friend count doesn't match someone else's or who you're friends with and things like that. Then I made a Instagram account in college because one of my friends was like, you should do that and post photography. So it was more of like a beneficial thing. People could see like, oh, this is the kind of work that you do. Which I think some people use it very well for that. And I posted one picture and then never posted again.
Yes.
And then deleted it recently. But I would still like, even when I had just that one picture, I was still more of like a user. Like I would go on and scroll and watch reels and stuff like that. And just spend way too much time. So I'd go through the cycle of like deleting it and then being like, oh, I just access it through my internet on my phone, like on Safari or whatever. And then I was just like, this is stupid. I'm just going to re-download it. And then spending too much time on it again, deleting it. And then beyond that, more time on like YouTube and things like that. More for like personal stuff, both with like posting stuff on a channel and then also just watching videos. And that one's a little tricky because I think a lot of the content on there is educational and helpful, and a lot of it's not that way, and can also, like to Alex's point, really quickly lead to temptation and things like that. So that's a battle too. And even just the time suck of it all, like how many hours I spend watching YouTube videos a week. And it's like, oof, I could be using that time for something better. So then that goes the same way. Like, okay, let me just get rid of it, delete it, try to minimize my usage of it. So,
yeah. So I guess I am even a little different than you guys. I remember being in high school and all my friends had Facebook, and even like, in order to be like part of a group chat with certain people from school, you needed Facebook to do that. And I remember asking my mom if I could get it. And I remember her answer. She said, no, because we're not a social media family. And I remember just like not even questioning that, and just being like, oh, I guess we're not a social media family. And I never like bugged her again about it. So never had it. I guess I got to college and created a Facebook profile and went to like put in information about myself, and then felt this overwhelming, like, I don't know what to put, like intimidated by like, I don't even know how I would post something. So didn't have it at all. Like, I guess I scrolled on it for a week and then nothing. So I've never had any social media in a meaningful way, but I have been a high school pastor for 6 years. So I think I've interacted with social media, at least through my students, and seeing how they use it. And, I guess I watch YouTube. So I used to have it on my phone and then moved to a dumb phone. I have a dumb phone now. And now I watch like maybe 20, 30 minutes, and it's just my niche hobbies. I watch disc golf on YouTube, and it's strange. But yeah, so I don't use a social part of the media. I use like just the media side of it, and super limited there. So yeah, maybe that's helpful for all of our experience.
Sure. I think it's interesting too, if you think about every single app, like there's TikTok and WhatsApp and Snapchat. And I mean, there's so many, and some kids have every single one of them, and they're bouncing around from one to the next to the next, and their brain never settles down.
Yeah.
And then you just look at the insane amount of like anxiety and depression in our young people.
Yeah.
And I think even in our adults, like if I spend literally like a few minutes scrolling Twitter, which I did like a couple weeks ago, I just felt anxious and gross and like tainted.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, like I don't need to see this stuff.
Yeah.
I don't need to know this stuff. I don't need to see all these other people's opinions. Like I have enough bad thoughts in my own head. I don't need other people's bad thoughts being placed in my head, So it's just crazy how ubiquitous it is and how pervasive. I know those are big words, but it's just everywhere, and it's all over everyone's devices. It's crazy.
And it takes like a long time, I think, to detox, to the point where when you get back on it, you realize you have that sense of like, oh, this is not right, this is not okay, or you feel gross, because I think it's so, like you said, it's everywhere. So you don't even think of it as being weird, until you can separate yourself from it for a little while, which is really tough to do.
Yeah. Well, I think if you guys are willing to go back, that kind of brings us back to this question of like the connection aspect. You said it's helpful, you can encourage people. You pointed out that like perhaps that's even a facade. Like you think you're connecting with people, when in fact, like, yeah, you hit a like button and that did very little to you, and it does very little to them. I think that's a pretty accurate depiction of like we use it to think that we're connected. Like I see pictures of Aunt Susan and her kids, and I think I know what's going on in their lives. And the problem with that is, one, like, you don't know that that's really what's going on in their life. I'm dealing with high schoolers who post just very deceptive things about, and that's kind of everything about social media. You pick what's on there. So do you really know that that's what they're doing? And then two, like you've appeased that feeling of like, I need to know what they're up to, without ever communicating with them, without ever actually reaching out and encouraging them and asking how their day has gone. That we think we're connecting with them, but really it's this kind of virtual facade of connection. So like perhaps that's a negative it could be a negative. Do you guys think, can you think of any other kind of spotlights of benefit in the connection category? Like in your ability to connect with other people, how is social media beneficial?
I do think there's a few benefits to social media being used for connection. For example, I oversee our communication department here, and I told our social media intern, I want you to create posts that help the church body get to know other people in the church body. And so an example is like if she films you and says, Connor, what's your favorite hobby? And you're like, Frisbee golf. Well, now that's out there on the internet, on somebody's Instagram feed or wherever. And they go, I love Frisbee golf too. And then when they come to church and talk to you, they're like, Frisbee golf. And maybe you'll actually take that relationship offline and go play Frisbee golf.
Okay.
Right? So I think it can be used to foster in-person connection on a deeper level, because now you're bringing to light certain aspects about other individuals in the church body that you didn't know. And that's what I tried to do at my last church when I was overseeing it. Same thing here. It's like we can use it to highlight certain things about Nick that someone else in the church goes, oh, me too. Let's be friends, right? So I do see that.
That's cool. That feels like a good benefit. Do you have any other ones in mind?
No, I was just going to say, I guess the same kind of thing. It's not like a real way, like offline way to meet people, but just for like jobs and things like that. Occupations, networking.
Yeah, LinkedIn is technically social media, right?
Yeah, even LinkedIn, but even on Facebook, like I've gotten a few jobs through just Facebook friends, or hey, message this guy or know this, whatever. So maybe in that way it's a tool and it's an avenue, but it's not, the only way you can do that. But that's another way to connect. That's not necessarily family or friends, but can help, still beneficial.
That's good. The work side of it. And that's helpful. What about negatives? Like what are in terms of connecting with other people, seeing what other people are posting, knowing their lives, are there things that is actually negative about that? And you brought up one, like you're not really connecting in most cases, but is there more?
Yeah, I think, maybe it comes down to, and this is maybe speaking more generally about how social media functions and how the apps are designed. And it's so easy, and you brought this up already, but it's so easy to not represent yourself in an accurate way.
Good, yeah.
And I think part of that's just because, like, how do you represent yourself? Even if we sat down and had a conversation for 10 minutes, like I feel like I would know a little bit more what's going on in your life, but we wouldn't have maybe got into work or family or like what you're stressed about or how much you love disc golf or something. There's so many other things. So to really like sit down and have a conversation with someone, maybe you can feel most connected in that way, like sit down, have coffee and talk for an hour. But like, how are you going to communicate that in like, a paragraph or one post? So I can maybe get those, very small little details of you like Frisbee golf. You really like that, I don't know, that dinner that you had the other night or something like that. But beyond that, if you're trying to convey something that has more meaning behind it, it's such an inefficient way to do that. And you likely, probably will communicate something with your posts, even if it's unintentional. If you're posting your love for disc golf and all you see are like bright blue skies and green fields and you throwing discs, like, wow, Connor's living it up. This is great. And you're communicating life is perfect, even if that's not actually what's going on. So to gather like the whole story of someone else through social media is so like inefficient that maybe we should just think of it that way, as just being a poor communicator.
That's interesting.
Like how life is,
Yeah. There's something like intrinsically unreal about it.
Yeah.
Because like you're curating something. So on some level, you're deciding what gets seen. You're deciding what gets posted. And with high schoolers, that's an exhausting thing. Like they talk all the time about, am I posting enough? So on one level, you're curating it, but on another level, it's being interpreted by everyone else that sees it, and you don't have much control over that. Like your personal communication, you have better control over the interpretation of what you're saying. That's a good thought.
And to think of all the people that you would want to sit down and spend an hour to chat with is probably like a few, but you're like telling hundreds of people that you kind of want to care for them and you want them to care for you in that same way. But in reality, like you probably wouldn't want to get coffee with them.
Yeah, that's a good point too.
So it's like,
And I think you're opening yourself up to a whole host of people that you don't need to be in touch with them, and you probably shouldn't.
That's good.
Like the older I get, the more myopic and focused my attention is on like just me and my little family. That sounds really wrong.
There's
but
something
like,
about a family that does that to you.
I mean, I used to care what everyone else did and what they were what was going on in their lives. And I realized like, why does this matter? Like they're in Kentucky. or whatever. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, even if I knew them in high school, like, how does knowing what Sally ate for lunch, who I went to high school with, how does that affect my life? Yeah. And so, like, as I get older and I get more focused, I cut more and more out of my life that's irrelevant.
Yeah.
And it's like, I always am thinking about cost benefit, like, analysis. Like, if I invest 25 minutes scrolling random people's stuff, how did that actually benefit the things that matter most to my life, right? And so, do I need to be connected to all these people? And then, you could start to compare your life to them, or think about someone that you shouldn't be thinking about. It's like, oh, I wonder what my ex-girlfriend is doing from high school. It's like, well, if you just eliminate all that, then you don't even have those thoughts, because it's not, there's just no, So there's just so many bad ways to connect on social media. In fact, I don't know if this is true. 75% of stats are false, and but 50% of divorce cases, or maybe more, 75% of divorce cases mention the word Facebook in the transcript.
Really?
Something like that.
That's fascinating.
Because it's connecting you to people that you ought not to be connected.
Yeah, that's good.
There's no reason in your real, actual daily life for you to be connected to these people.
Yeah.
That's
great. That's
just,
like,
if you live offline, is there any reason for you to be connected to person X, person Y?
Yeah.
No, there's not. But you are, and then you're allowing them in, and then it can go places it shouldn't.
True.
So.
Man, there's like three things there. They're like, comparison, you brought up, like, you're comparing your lives to them. Capacity, like, yes, you now have a mile wide list of friends, but you're just going to be like an inch deep with all of them. So, like, you're not capable of that. And then on top of that, should you be communicating with people in such a way that can be so anonymous and so disconnected from the rest of your life? Like, that leads to a lot of things there. And I think all of that, as a high school pastor, I just resonates with my high schoolers. Like, so many of them, the problem with social media is this comparison of, like, I see what she's doing at school and I'm fear of missing out. Like, I want to be part of that group and I'm not, or she's prettier than me. And all that is so negative. And I think especially when you think of it in terms of our kids, right? Like, most of the young adults are like, yeah, my kids, I'm not going to give it to them because they're too young. And at some point they'll realize they don't need to be comparing themselves to others. But at some point you're just too young for this. I think it's probably true that extends further than we realize. But it's super dangerous in that regard. And then, we're just not really actually connecting with anybody. We think we are. Yeah.
The comparison thing's big. And it's so discouraging to compare your life to other people's highlights, And I think if our attention is on God and on what he's placed in front of us, and we're not doing this all the time, then we're pretty happy.
Yeah.
But as soon as we take our attention off God and what he's placed in front of us, and we're looking around at everyone else and measuring our life according to what they're posting, then we get unhappy.
Yeah.
My wife always says, comparison is the killer of joy, or thief of joy. It's a quote from some famous person I don't know, but I listen to my wife.
Yeah, that's good. You can quote her saying it.
There you go.
And like you mentioned, the veneer, the false self that people post online is literally false. Like, we have someone very close in our life who is, she is very depressed and is having a really rough season, but everything she posts online is happy, fun, dancing, And my wife knows, cause she follows this person, and it's like, but we know her, and it's like, what she's posting is like literally the opposite of how she's actually feeling.
Yeah.
So it's like,
that's so I feel like everyone has that person that you're like, oh, I know what they say on social media. And then you meet them and they're a perfectly nice person. And you're like, how are you this way on social media?
You're saying the opposite. They're
one
negative
way or the other.
on social media.
I think that's what I see more, is they're like they're combative and they're yelling at people, and then you meet them and they're just sweet and pleasant and nice. And you're like, what happened there? But even the opposite, like, things are rough and they're just posting the highlights.
Right.
And man, that's like, I just think, what do we do with this? Where some people, and I think it's most people and all of us in some ways, are creating one form of ourself online, like this persona, like whether we see it that way or not, you're creating this virtual self who's you in some ways, but not you in other ways. But also then you have like your real self, who is your embodied self. And I think there's just something about that that's not healthy, of whether it's because it takes the emphasis off of our real selves and we can kind of live in this virtual world, or it's just dishonest. Like there's something not healthy about curating two types of selves. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think even just listening to you too, and about, you know, the story of this woman who's posting this, you know, in a way that's contrasting and different from her real life. Maybe it's just me. I don't use social media that much and I'm more cynical towards it, I think, but I'm just like, what's the point, right? Like who's really benefiting so much if she's posting, or if anyone's posting in a way that's contrary to what their, you know, real life is. If they deleted their account and just never posted again and focused on whatever, not saying that's, you know, what they should do, but would that make a difference? You know, the same thing with, you know, kids needing to compare themselves or whatever. Yeah, just maybe there's a certain level of like an age and a maturity that comes with that to be able to distinguish of if this is a useful thing or not. But yeah, it just seems like there's so much time that's wasted on social media that's not in line with even its original intent to connect people. And then at that point, it's like, why are you wasting time doing that?
Well, who benefits from us posting on social media? The social media companies.
Yes.
They are literally mad geniuses.
Yeah.
Like they have convinced all of humanity, at least like 2 billion of us, that or maybe more, that we should be creating free content for their company, posting it for them to hook our friends back onto their app.
Yeah, that's true.
So that we can get, all they give us are like little, like artificial digital hearts, like button, right?
Yeah.
Like I got 45 likes.
Yeah,
my gosh, my life, right? But they're using us to create content for them. And again, I use social media for my online ministry, but like, it's just a mind-boggling business model. It's
true.
like, this is crazy genius. Like they've hooked all of us. They're getting free content. Like we don't get paid for this. We're spending our time, our energy, our creativity for their platform to hook our friends into their platform. And the only thing we get rewarded with are like digital hearts, but they get cash because they have advertisers paying them so that they can show us ads.
Yeah.
And their whole goal is to keep people on their app as much as possible. So if anybody's listening and they're like, it's really hard for me to like not swipe and scroll whenever I have a down second. Yeah. And I see this all the time. Like when I'm driving, I see people at the stoplight, they're scrolling. It's literally like you can't just for 10 seconds not touch your phone. But it's so addictive and they know exactly how to hook us with novelty. Novelty. What am I going to see that's going to fill the emptiness in my soul? Like, and I don't know why we're so...
Or what am I going to miss out on if I stop scrolling now? And that's just so much stress though. I mean, even multitasking at a red light to be checking your phone is not only one dangerous, but also just like you're adding so much stress into your day and you could just like quiet some of that down.
It's it's a form of it that like they developed it with a like button so that we will be comparing, right? It's become this way of how do we gauge whether something's true or good or right? Well, that one got a lot of likes and the fact that like everyone's voice is equal. We don't know who those likes came from. Turns it into this echo chamber of like, if I just start saying the right sort of things, other people will affirm it. And then like I'll become influential and, it forces comparison. I think it diminishes truth in a lot of way because it becomes like, well, what's your truth? And if you get enough likes, like that's true then, right? That enough people agree with you, so that's what's good and what's right, and that's dangerous too.
From your perspective too, with the high schoolers, are there any that don't use social media that maybe have a different experience of what that's like? That might be pretty rare. I don't know.
Yeah, I think so. Young adults versus high schoolers, there's kind of a big difference. At this point with my high schoolers, all of them love it for its ability to entertain them. Like most of them aren't using it for connection, and most of them see the negatives of the connection. Like my sister-in-law is a high schooler and she'll say like, yeah, I feel myself comparing myself to others and I don't like that, but I still have it because I need to know what they're doing and I need to know and I need to post. And even though I'm exhausted with it, like I need to keep up with it. But most of them are like, well, I have TikTok because it's just so entertaining. And they talk about it in such a way, like I can just turn my brain off and watch funny videos and laugh. And like maybe we should talk about that. Like in terms of social media being entertaining, is this beneficial or is this negative? Like what's the benefit of that?
Oh, I think
Yeah,
I'm going to say something really controversial, and I don't know if it's actually true. So take that with a grain of salt. But I think China was like, how do we cripple our American competition? Let's make their young next generation as dumb as possible by giving them a bunch of random junk to look at and laugh at and shorten their attention span to less than a goldfish. Because a goldfish has a 12-second attention span and humans today have a 9-second attention span. So I'm like, man, that was a genius move from China. They're like, how do we make the next generation just completely inept?
Yeah.
Let's give them TikTok algorithm.
Yeah. And I asked him like, when was the last time you stood in a grocery store line without pulling your phone out? And most of them are like, oh, I never even considered that you could do that. And like, so one, it's killing our attention spans. We're never alone with our thoughts. Two, it's causing you to look down instead of like around yourself and be willing to communicate with others. Like I even feel that myself. Like I have a dumb phone, and still, if I see someone walking towards me at a grocery store, like there's this instinct to I should
pull out your phone.
pull something out. Just look at the flip phone. Yeah. Like what am I doing?
What time is it?
But it feels too awkward to actually interact with people, so it becomes a safety thing.
That's a really good point.
Yeah, this big problem of we can't be alone with our thoughts. Like we are always listening to music, or we're always scrolling, or we have no attention span. I think it's pretty negative for our ability to like self-analyze and.
Yeah, I've definitely seen that. I think with younger, maybe high school age people as well. When I don't know how I don't know influential or smart my thoughts were in high school about bigger issues, but sometimes when you ask them about more serious things, it's like it's harder for them to form their own opinions or their thoughts on it. And if anything, they might regurgitate what they've heard or seen online. But having those grocery store lines, red lights, whatever it is, when you're stopped in your car to then just think about stuff, like as a, creative kind of person who likes to design things and work on, creative endeavors. When I'm like in social media too much, like it definitely lowers that creative drive or those like random thoughts. Cause I think that's when your brain obviously has that time to just process on what you've thought about, what's gone on in your life. And then a thought will just hit you. And it's like, you didn't think about that. It just came to your mind. So there's such like a benefit and a gift to boredom and to silence. That's like really hard, I think, to experience. Even I do the same thing. I'll walk down the hall. If I don't want to talk to someone, pull up my phone. I'm like, I had something important to do on here. That way I couldn't, don't have to talk to you. But just being forced even to those interactions or just being bored can be so beneficial. But when you're like ingrained to the point where it's like, I don't even know I could do that. Like I could go a whole day without my phone and like be alive, and like, it's okay. It's a tough thing to break out of.
I mean, you mentioned the word silence and boredom, and two thoughts. One is like, why do your best thoughts come to you in the shower? Or your most interesting solutions to problems you're facing in the shower? Because you have nothing to distract you, right? You're bored in a sense, right? Well, it's interesting that they made phones waterproof recently, right? The newer generations of phones are waterproof. I heard, I don't know if it's true, I heard that they did that to get into the shower with you, so that they're like, that's the one moment of time in people's day where we can't invade, and so they're like, let's, I don't know if that's true. The second thing is, how does God speak? His voice is what? Still and small. Still small voice, right? And it's like, if you don't have any bandwidth free because you're always inputting, honestly, usually the things of the world, then how in the world is God's still small voice supposed to hit us, if we don't have any freedom in our minds because we're constantly distracted? I think that's a huge problem for Christians today.
But benefits, like it's so hard to talk about benefits. What are the benefits? Are there benefits of, yes, I can turn my brain off? Because I think in some level, all Christians, all people seek entertainment in some ways. And yes, all of us have our ideas of what is the best form of entertainment or what's a bad form of entertainment. Can we objectively look at this for high schoolers and say that's just an overwhelmingly negative form of entertainment? Or is there some room for like, just if you have limits? What do you guys think? Is there a beneficial aspect to the entertainment of social media?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's, you can look at it as like a net positive or a net negative, meaning that, if it turns into a math equation, you add it together, time on social media, and the benefit that it would be an overall negative or positive outcome. I would be hard pressed to find that it would be a more positive outcome.
Yeah.
So in that sense, you could just say, I'm just going to cut it out. It's like, sugar, if I eat that, it's bad. I'm just going to stop eating it. I think in most things in life, there's some degree of moderation is like key to life, and being able to partake in certain things, but not have it overtake your life. That being said, I struggle with it. I'm not very good at like setting those limitations for myself either. Like I'll spend way too much time watching YouTube videos like before falling asleep, or I'll wake up and watch one. It's like, it's the first thing I do before I go to bed before I go to bed and right when I wake up. Like that's a super personal time, and like something that it's like, why there's nothing else that I do like that. I should be reading my Bible. Like I do watch YouTube videos, So I think putting those rules on yourself is good, but it's such a struggle to either find out how to do that on your phone. Your phone is somewhat nice. I know iPhone has like focus modes and stuff like that. Those can be helpful, or have accountability and things like that. But it's hard to just not want to feel like you just cut it all the way out, But I think there is still some benefit, but I don't think overall it's maybe the most beneficial.
Benefit for the type of entertainment of a short either swiping carousels or short videos. I don't see a benefit. I do admit that some of them are hilarious and there's a lot of creativity. Like there are some genuinely creative people who are like, wow, how did you think to do that? That's so cool. But I don't think it's a benefit because it's not building up my soul. And even if it is like a 30-second like sermon recap thing, usually people are only watching the first 5 seconds and swiping up, you know what I mean? To the funny cat or whatever. And so I don't see benefit to short form video content, other than potentially like introducing people to an idea that they've never thought before. And then maybe they want to go down that rabbit trail into more long form content or a book or something like that. Or maybe they get introduced to your church through a short form video and they're like, oh, cool. And then they follow you and now they're getting more hopefully helpful content from the church social media intern. You can do it, Hannah. I don't see benefit from that form of entertainment.
So the pushback I get when I tell students they shouldn't have social media is they see it as just like, you hate humor or you hate joy. Like, this is fun and I get to laugh. Isn't that a good thing? Like, doesn't God give us gifts to enjoy and to laugh at, and to humor and comedy is so often a good thing? And I think you're right. They're right. I'm not saying like Christians should not have fun. Please don't hear that. And I have to tell my students that all the time. But does like the danger of this form of humor and comedy outweigh like the benefit of it is one thing. And even just a form of it, that one video to the next, like this the endlessness is such a problem when we're thinking about enjoyment and joy and humor and those sort of things. Because yes, God gave us these things as a gift to enjoy, but on the time frame he's given us those things. Like whenever we're looking for endless of anything, we're probably headed into like idolatry type ways of thinking. Like God gives us enjoyment for a moment, for a time. Like he gives us a story, a fairy tale to enjoy for the length of the fairy tale. And by the end of it, we should be saying, praise God, that was wonderful and enjoyable, but it ended. And now we move on to the next thing. The fact that like we have limitless entertainment, I think it distorts what God is doing through story, through enjoyment. It becomes a God to us rather than trusting that it's given to us for a moment to enjoy. It takes us outside of being human, because like being human is to enjoy the gifts God has given in their time. And when we're endless, when we're have no stop to this, we're actually not functioning as creatures of God. We're trying to make, it sounds abstract, but we're making ourselves gods. We're trying to receive enjoyment that hasn't been given to us. And I think we see that even in like video games. Like the most popular video games are no longer the story driven. You play through it once, it was wonderful and entertaining. No, the most popular video games are the endless loop Fortnite, Call of Duty multiplayer, like the things that you just play over and over and over. I was talking to one of my students the other day who had 3,000 hours logged on one of these video games. Like, and he's a high schooler. That's 3,000 hours. I asked him to like divide that many hours by the length of the audio Bible. Like how many listens of the audio Bible could you get through? And I think it was like 40. You could listen to the whole Bible 40 times in the amount of time you spent on that one video game.
And what did that give you in return? And that's what I always come
it's crazy.
back to is like, is the time invested in your social media feed giving you any positive return that's actually affecting the life that God has entrusted to you?
Yeah.
I can't.
It's not. and so one, like, yeah, the form, this limitlessness is awful, but the content, even they're like, it's funny and I get to laugh at it. They themselves call it brain rot. Like that's the term that most of the young adults and high schoolers are using, brain rot. And they use it like, oh yeah, I just watched brain rot for an hour. It is brain rot. Like, I don't know if you realize this, like your students, what you're viewing on social media is as much consumption is like what you eat. Right? Like if I eat a cookie, I think we all have this idea of that cookie is going to change my body in some sort of way or do something to me, make me bigger. Or if I eat lettuce, it'll make me smaller. I don't know. Maybe we'll do dieting in the future. Maybe we'll talk about it then. But what I'm getting at is what we look at is actually changing us and is actually shaping us and forming us. And I don't think any of our students or who are spending so much time on social media realize that 8 seconds video is actually forming your brain and is like actively changing you. And because I think the virtual world has done this to us. We have a button and we can turn it off and it's all anonymous and it's all virtual and it's compartmentalized to the in-between moments. But no, those in-between moments are shaping and forming you. And you have admitted that it's brain rot. Like there's something so dangerous that it's deceptive. It doesn't show us exactly how it's forming us and exactly how it's shaping us, but it is.
It's interesting. I saw an article speaking to it forming people. A lady said, Instagram knew I was a lesbian before I did. And she was like, I started seeing like these lesbian type videos and then they kept giving me more. And then I realized I am a lesbian. And
or could it be?
Yeah. That it formed you into that lifestyle.
Yeah.
Right? It's wild.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think, I forget if you brought it up earlier, but about just being afraid to kind of be with your own thoughts, like turn off your phone, you're doom scrolling for a second. Cause I've heard the same thing too, where it's like, oh, I just go on to like relax. I got an hour. I need to do this. I need to relax in that way.
Yeah.
Which I mean, I get too. When I want to relax, I'll, watch a movie or something, watch a TV show. There's not that much that's different there. But when you're afraid to just be with your own thoughts at all, it creates, or at least it kind of suffocates that natural breathing space that you'd get to hear God and to just have new thoughts pop in your head. And I think, at least it's in my head, there's always this thought where it's like, well, I'm just relaxing right now. I'll think about that later. Like I'll have plenty of time for this thought or that thought or time with God here or there, whatever. And then you realize that it's like, yeah, you have 3,000 hours in a game, or like you look at your screen time, I'm sure it's even more than that.
Yeah.
And all those in between moments and all those little 5 minutes here, 10 minutes there, whatever, add up to that. There's no silence. There's no, margin or breath to have those times of, what do I actually think about this? Or what do I want to do with my life? Those big, scary questions come into your mind and I want to just look on my phone. I don't have to think about that thought anymore. And then 10 years go by and it's like, what did you do? So that's convicting to me, at least, to be like, oh, I got to delete this, turn this off.
Well, and the fact that you can't is because you've done it. So because your attention span really has been changed.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like the fact that you can't pick up a book and sit down for an hour and focus on that book is because your brain has been shaped so much by what you have consumed, on the form of it, the dopamine hit of swiping down. Like,
we should definitely cut this conversation down into 60-second videos and post it on our social.
You have to, if you want to get the word out, right?
Yeah. What do you guys think about like how? So social media is here in our world. We're not putting it back in the box. We're not making it go away, even though some of us might wish that it could. I think maybe a healthy step is to obviously analyze where you're at with it, your relationship with it, analyze like the people who made it, what's their intentions behind the platform that you use all the time. They're just people too. It's like they use a crazy complex algorithm, but they're just people and their end goal is to make money. And then maybe deleting it or something like that. But how do we as Christians interact with that? I mean, we use it as a church. We have social media accounts. If we just said, oh, we don't like social media at all, we could delete all that stuff. And it'd be really hard to find, newcomers. So there is something about that where you can reach out to people who need to hear about Jesus, or care for people who you otherwise couldn't care for, show your support, donate to people who need it. So what do you guys think about that?
Well, I've heard people say, well, if we want to reach people, we have to go where they are. Right. And so that's their argument for being on social. And I kind of agree with that. Like, okay, if people are already using it, would I want most of society to get off social media for their own spiritual and mental well-being? Yes, of course. But they're there. Okay. So can we maybe meet them there and use our content to help them? I know you kind of started the question asking, how do we handle social media in our own lives? But then you also pivoted to some of the like benefits. So your question kind of shifted. So I'm kind of answering the latter
go for
half
it anyway
of that. And so I do think, okay, well, they're there. How can we encourage them to grow? But I always use this analogy, like, here's society on social media. It's a train racing off of a cliff. And if we get on the train to encourage people on using the social media, which is the train, all we're doing is we're just kind of bumping them back to the last wagon, but the whole thing's still going down, So it's like, it's like, yes, we're going to show up where they are and encourage them, but good grief, please, people, get off. And I think that goes to the first part of your question, which is like, can we get off? And unless that's not what you're asking.
No, I think it is. Or like, how do people, balance social media in a healthy way in their lives?
You want to start?
I think, so I think this is an excellent question. And one analogy that I've heard brought up here is just thinking of technology and the effects of technology that are imperceptible, like central heating. Before central heating, if you wanted to stay warm, you came to the family room where you had a fireplace, unless you're really rich and you had fireplaces in each room, but that wasn't most people. You came to the family room with a fireplace and the family was together. And then central heating was developed where hot air could be pushed into every room, which the whole world is like, this is great, right? Or everyone that had it, like, totally great. But what it ended up doing was now the family's isolated in their own rooms. Like, you don't have to come together as a family when it's cold outside and be together. You can kind of do your own thing in your own room. And it's one of these, like, no one wants to go back to the time before we had central heating. Like, I think we all would say, yeah, central heating's good. But the awareness now of actually look how much more isolated we can be. And then intentional walking in, like, okay, well, how are we going to keep the family together? And like, how are we going to make sure these things come back? It's so challenging because it's so much easier to just not be intentional about it. It's so much easier just to kind of slip into the same routines, or even small things like, yeah, I'm going to put an hour limit on my phone. Will shut it off after an hour. Perhaps this technology, like, perhaps we need to reckon with, like, the very shape of it is so much more dangerous than we realize. It's shaping us so much more than we realize. Perhaps it is that really the best answer for us is to get rid of it entirely. But if you're not willing to do that, or you really do think the benefits outweigh, being intentional with the dangers, like knowing them, reminding yourself of them, having someone keeping you accountable of the dangers, of asking you questions like, when was the last time you saw a picture of someone and compared yourself to them and kind of felt the shame of you're not good enough? Or when was the last time you felt exhausted about not knowing what to post or how to post? And having it, like, doing it together, I think is really the only healthy way to do it. If you are willing to do it, not just cut it out.
I think you brought up the point of, like, it's the lowest common denominator is the easiest thing to just kind of go with the flow.
Yeah.
And I think about, like, all those parents who they're just like, here's a tablet, go away.
Yeah.
Like, it's so easy to let the tablet babysit your kids. Right. But, like, I have a 13-year-old and 10-year-old, and I'm like, I want to be more intentional to look into their eyes, to put my hand on their back, to pet their hair, and two little big girls now.
Yeah.
And it's like, like, the just like, here's a tablet, go away mentality, or like everyone's at the restaurant, they spent $75 on like junky burgers, and they're all like not even looking at each other, and you're like, what is this?
Yeah.
So I think we should give some practical tips for
good.
getting people off of social. I don't say this like with pride, I say it because I struggled so much with like, I have an obsessive personality, so I can get just super looped into stuff. So I've had to be really brutal on myself in my life and having like extreme boundaries that like probably most people listening wouldn't need to have.
Yeah.
But like, you know, I've done the dumb phone thing many times. One thing that I did, if you struggle with social media on your phone, just like literally take it off your phone, go to the parental controls, give it to either your spouse or a close friend and say, lock my app store. So I cannot re-download the app. So I have my app store locked. I used to like, once that was, if I wanted to check it, I would only check it from my browser. So I'd have to go to my computer and open it there. You know what I mean? But then that still wasn't good for me because there's just so much junk on social media that I don't need to see or know about. So now I just like literally block the websites like with like a terminal code, right? So I think people should just be brutal. Like Jesus said, if your right hand causes you to sin, cut it off, you know? And so I think we need to be really brutal about, is this thing hurting me? Is this thing causing me to stumble and sin? Is this thing benefiting me in any way? Then no, then I'm going to cut it off and be pretty strong about it.
Yeah.
So how would you recommend people move away from the addiction to social media?
Yeah. I think first answer with any addiction is like, don't start. And so like to all the parents, like recognize that the way that technology has progressed in the last 30 years is this like parents are kind of behind the 8 ball and kids are on the forefront of all technology. So just this like hard nosed, when your kid wants it, I'd say just start off, just know. And
my kids are like, Dad, please, when can we have a smartphone? I'm like, when you drive, I'll get you a smartphone that I will completely lock down except for navigation and Spotify. You know,
you move off to college and you are an adult.
Yeah.
And I think at that point, like they'll thank you for it in most cases. Yep. So yeah, I think the easiest answer is don't start. And then, yeah, just this like trial. Anyone that's listening to this thinking like, maybe I do have an addiction to social media, or maybe I do, these things are more unhealthy than I realize. Like, yeah, if you just cut it off for a week, like erase it all off your phone, no way to go on it for an entire week, then you will really know how controlling it is of your life. Like you will really feel all of those moments where like, oh, I got to pull up. Wait a second. Why am I pulling on my phone? Like after just a week of trying this, I think you'll realize like this does have a stranglehold. And perhaps after that, you'll want to say, yeah, maybe I can do this with healthy boundaries and healthy limits. And then you can walk in it with help from somebody else. But I think that like just a significant amount of time, even if it's a week, 3 days, whatever it is, just like take a trial run of deleting it. And if you're not convinced that you're addicted, by the end of that week, you'll probably be convinced that you're addicted and you'll have a better leg up in fighting these things.
Mm-hmm.
That's an interesting idea to treat it almost like you would nutrition or food. Like if you eat junk food and you feel terrible, you cut junk food out, you start eating healthy, then you feel good. That's a great way, way to view how bad junk food is. So if you can cut social media out for a little while and see how much of a difference it makes, just try it for a day, a few days, a week, and kind of trick yourself into being like, let's just try it as like a momentary thing. And you might see the benefits to that. I think it's easy, or maybe I think the right answer as well is just cut it out. If it causes you to stumble, cut it out. But it's a little bit harder, especially with younger people, to then feel like, okay, I don't maybe feel that strongly about that, so I'm just going to try it for a little bit, try picking up a book or reading or something. And I also think there's a weird trend too, where I see some people deleting their social media and then it's almost like that's cool, I don't know how much that'll transition into, the younger generation, all that stuff. But it's almost like you're cool and you can be a rebel too by like not having social media. Yeah. So maybe do that too, be a cool person, delete it.
Into it.
Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah.
And I think there's so much more to the conversation that we're not even getting to. Like what is the information doing to us? Like this information side of it. Like how are you getting your news from social media? How helpful is that? We talked really only about connection and entertainment. You have this whole other side of like, what type of information are you getting? How are you interacting with it? Usually it's 30-second clips, and that's even the form of that is dangerous for our ability to think deeply about things. So you have like the information side, and then yeah, I don't know. You could go other places or attention span stuff, that sort of stuff. There's more conversation, or the social side. Like, I think most people are more willing to argue with somebody on social media than they are sitting in front of them looking in the eye. Like, and I know not everyone struggles with that, and that's probably why we didn't talk about it here, but how is social media making us more combative or confrontive? Or there's like a few different facets that further conversation is needed and deep thinking about is needed.
Yeah.
I think if we cut it out and replace it with something that's actually going to help your life, everyone will be glad that they did that. Mm-hmm. And I want to, I don't know if we're ending, but we haven't read any scripture yet.
Oh.
Philippians 4:8. Finally, brothers, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is commendable, if there is any excellence, if there's anything worthy of praise, think about these things. And so fill your mind with that, not with garbage.
Are these the things that are on social media?
And
usually not.
And the 2 verses before that is like my go-to if you're feeling anxious. So read through Philippians and reassess your use of social media.
That's good.
Well, I really enjoyed this conversation that we had. I hope that everyone watching was able to get something out of it as well. We'd love to keep discussing more questions like this in the future. Remember, there's no dumb question. So if you have a question, feel free to email us at ask@rhcc.net. And that's it. Thanks for joining us.